and was moved out of the city into its own incorporated non-for-profit in 1983. We have since had another department, the Sustainable Transportation, be added. So I'm the Building Performance Program Manager. I run the Building Performance Department, and then we are doing things like this. We do a lot of education. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm
No,
not
you're all right.
standing in the right spot. Okay. All right. I won't move. I promise. um, and so sustainable transportation, I know enough to be dangerous here, but it really is run by it has its own department manager. They do a lot of infrastructure installation projects like EV charging stations. They were the main implementer of the streetlight charging station program in Kansas City, Missouri, if any of you are familiar with that. We in building performance do a lot of training, training like this, informal volunteer-based attendance, and then professional grade training. We have a really great gal named Charlotte Reed, who is another expert in this across the country, really. She served on multiple committees, on code committees, does a lot of national travel. And she is our teacher for contractors, building code officials, designers like architects and engineers come to her classes. And we do deep dives on the International Energy Conservation Code with her as our teacher. And then we do other presentations, like I'm speaking this Thursday to a professional group about the energy code in Kansas City, Missouri's energy code, which is one of the most robust now in the nation, actually. Okay, so the Energy Solutions Hub, which is sort of our resource center for building owners, building occupants, and anybody else that needs information and resources around building performance. We run the energy benchmarking facilitation for the city of Kansas City, Missouri. I'm happy to answer any questions on that, but that's basically, measuring energy use for larger building owners in the Kansas City, Missouri proper boundary. We have partners like Children's Mercy Hospital. I'm going to talk about a report that we published in partnership with Children's Mercy Hospital and UMKC on the weatherization's impacts on pediatric asthma patients. It was a wonderful, eye-opening report. I will encourage you to read it once I'm done here today. And, we just have a lot of different how-tos, best practices, and what have you. And we're about ready to launch, hopefully, assuming the drama and chaos is going to settle down from its federal program. But over the next 3.5 years, we hope to be teaching people the energy efficiency vocations, which is how I got my start. I've been 18 years in this industry. I switched into it from a vocational classroom myself, which was one of the reasons I just helped design the jobs training program the way we did, which is using a vocational energy vocation called the Home Energy Rater. And that profession goes in and tests buildings, tests ductwork, does energy modeling, and so on and so forth. And I had my own business called Small Step Energy Solutions that did that. I was a home energy specialist for 12 years, and then I went into the commercial side. And then the COVID happened. I was furloughed, and now I'm here. It'll be 4 years in April 2021. Helping spread the news about building performance. Oh, there I am. I didn't realize I had a slide already. So, I had architects, building managers, owners, homeowners, and general contractors as my client base. Okay, so enough about me, enough about Metropolitan Energy Center. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. But I've had this slide, and it sounds like some of you in the room kind of already had a sneak peek, but I wanted this just to be an example of how energy conservation return on investment is extremely strong. And, what's the first thing you think of when you think of green building? Don't lie, is it solar panels? Solar panels are popular. They're kind of the sexy attribute of sustainable construction, as it were. And really the retrofits have as strong or stronger of a return on investment than putting solar on your roof. And again, it's two things. You got to talk about energy conservation and you got to talk about generation. Solar is one of those. It's the generation. I'm a specialist on the conservation side, the building performance, the building science side. I know enough to be dangerous to talk solar. So let's talk about what are the concepts in building performance. Feel free to ask questions during the presentation. If anything isn't clear, you have a follow-up question, and then we can also answer questions too at the end. So small group, super casual. Okay, so we're going to talk about the principles of heat transfer, pressure differentials, and then the need for fresh air exchange in a building. Okay, so yes, this is very, very fundamental, but frankly, I didn't know this when I first entered the energy vocational classroom for that home energy rater. That, because you as a layperson, you go outside and you say, oh gosh, the cold is penetrating my skin, and it's really the other way around. It's that your heat is leaving your body if you don't have a jacket on, and then your body starts burning calories to keep your body at a consistent temperature, 98 degrees or whatever. And that's exactly what the building is doing as well. That is trying to mitigate in the winter heat loss. And in the summer, we're trying to mitigate heat gain, but it's going in one direction. Cold is not flowing towards you. It's the other way around. And insulation is the material that we use to slow down that heat movement. And the effectiveness on the insulation is that R value. I could say the inverse is the U, but I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name, Sir Architect.
Jim Marshall.
Jim. Okay. So Jim would probably be able to talk all day about U value, but R value is sort of what everybody understands. If you go to the hardware store, you're going to see an R13 bat or an R19 bat, or you're going to see that like extruded polystyrene or blue board is an R5 per inch. That is all that thermal is doing, is explaining how fast heat moves through that material. And the higher the value, the more effective it is at slowing. Pressure differentials also come into play. So this slide looks like I'm saying cold air is moving towards heat, but what this is demonstrating is pressure movement and cold wind. So, weather is a change in pressure, right? And so the same sort of pressure differential is happening in a building. You have cold wind in the winter that's pushing into the building because of pressure differentials. And a building naturally has a neutral pressure plane, and below it, it's in negative pressure. So it's going to pull that air in, and above it on a windy day, it's going to have positive pressure, and it's going to exhaust, if you will, air out of the plane of the space above that neutral pressure plane. I am getting, I know, technical. Does anybody have any questions on this? The way stack effect works and how when on a winter day is moving through your house. It's called air changes per hour. It's what other people know as a drafty house, old drafty house, right? So those are actually air leaks that we can control as building occupants. Everybody just thinks that we're supposed to live in cold, drafty houses, and it really doesn't have to be that way. And so this is really just about how that pressure differential works. And, oh, mind the camera. So just also imagine too, heat moves more quickly the bigger the temperature differential too, right? So if you, like a few weeks ago when it was 9 below and your thermostat was maybe set to 72, you being in general you just have cold wind just constantly turning over your house. And then this next slide is a tool that an energy professional uses to measure how leaky your house is on that cold wintry day that's blowing 25 miles per hour outside, for example. It's called a blower door. Anybody familiar? I know, Mike, I know you're familiar. Has anybody else seen this before? energy auditors, if you ever hire a professional energy auditor, they better come packing with one of these. It goes in one of your exterior doors. The rest of your house is shut and sealed up. So you want to make sure that you don't have any windows cracked or garage door cracked open or anything else that would give it a inaccurate reading. And so the rest of the house is locked up. We're inside and we're taking a measurement. We take this to a certain pressure and then we take a measurement through the fan using a special piece of equipment. And then we use a calculation to tell you how leaky your house is. I've done hundreds of energy audits, and back in my day, done hundreds of energy audits with a blower door fan and infrared camera. And like homes in the city center of Kansas City, be it either side of the state line, can have upwards of 10 or more air changes per hour, meaning that 100% of your volume of air is turning over every hour. 10, 12, 14, even 15, 16, 17, I've seen it. Sure, Mike has used some blower doors too, and probably tell you some horror stories. And then we keep the fan on after we take that initial measurement and take that infrared camera so it sees energy issues. Here's another illustration of how air moves through the house. And here we're getting out of the abstract and more into specifics, talking about how air can leak through your foundation to above grade wall connections, through your windows, and then again out through the leaks in your ceiling, like recessed lighting. Oh my gosh. Doing an energy audit out in sort of like Southern Overland Park, where I'd see houses built in 80s and 90s that had like 30 recessed light fixtures in that space between the attic and the conditioned envelope. And that's just like having a huge hole in your roof. Yes, sir.
Mine came out to my house a few years ago, and he found a place where the pipes were going up to the next story, and that was just an empty space. He took a match and you could just see the flame going up that way.
Really common.
Yeah.
Really common. And unfortunately still common in a lot of modern code built single family homes, because the code, hopefully that's going to change soon, but most codes have been watered down and amended to the equivalent. You'll see 2018, like for example, Overland Park says they're on 2018 energy code, but it's been amended down to a 2009, which means there's no energy inspection required. And I can't tell you how many of those types of shafts that I would pinpoint when I was doing my own inspections for builders that hired my services as optional, not code-based, that would just be covered up by drywall and never to be seen or heard from again. So again, this is just illustrating, think out, breathing in 22 degrees and out 70 degrees. That's a lot of money that's flying out the top of your roof. And then this picture also has equipment and ductwork shown in the attic, which also is more common than you would think, and a very horrible practice, but not best practice. So, we have my infrared camera as, with the blower door running, and now you can see the leaks. And this is a fine example of, yes, windows that are leaking through the sash. And also, though, around the rough opening. So you can see cold air. That's the camera's cold air. You see it too around the baseboard. And that means, the blower door is running. So it's making the house all at negative pressure. And so the infrared camera can see these air leaks. And so this is a good example of why just getting new windows is not a best practice. You have to have somebody, if your windows are bad, you need somebody to come in there and understand how to remove the window trim and seal around the rough opening and replace the window trim. And that's how you stop that leakiness around the actual window. And the windows themselves are so expensive, that's usually never, unless the window's in disrepair, something that I recommend at first. It's something that we recommend down the line, because the return on investment on replacing your windows is not that great because of the expense of the window. us energy professionals have these infrared cameras to also check the ceilings and the walls for insulation. And this picture is showing a warm walls with an uninsulated ceiling above it. So you know that it's uninsulated because the ceiling joists are warmer than the cavity. When there's insulation in the cavities, it's going to be the opposite. And when your ceiling joists are warmer than the drywall in between, that means you need insulation up there. That is an image of a completely uninsulated ceiling. Most likely there's nothing up there. And so the infrared camera, and of course it's going to depend on the time of year too, and you learn how to read the colors of the image depending. This is showing you a wall that is mostly insulated but was not installed. The insulation was not installed correctly, so you see the pink and the red and the purple in the walls. What that is most likely are smashed fiberglass bats, which are still in the code for most of our residences, except, again, Kansas City, Missouri, since we passed a really good code a couple of years ago for energy. But know that in most, and this is something I really am trying to sink in case any of you consider yourselves activists to your, ever make comments to city councils. If codes come up on the residential side, like I said, there have been interests that have continued to amend our code down to a 2009 equivalent, which is an R13 fiberglass bat in a 2x4 wall cavity, nothing else. And the installers, Mike, present company excluded.
No, I think some.
Now, seriously though, Mike does it the right way and does blown-in systems. Installers that are installing those bats, those craft-based fiberglass bats, they are usually compensated by the square foot on these new builds, not by the hour. And so they are compensated. The faster they go, the more money they make. And they're not installing these bats to actually take advantage of the insulated value that they do have. They're smashing them around, ladder blocks and other types of framing inside the cavity. And when you smash fiberglass bat, you negate the insulation value and you get these cold spots here. And that is unfortunately all over our suburbs. Still is. Most of the Johnson County cities are reviewing the new 2024 International Energy Conservation Code this year. And it's important for people to speak out and tell them to get rid of those watered down amendments because it's not good for occupancy health. It's not good for the durability of the building. It's not good for comfort, all those things. Okay, so that's gone through sort of what's happening out there in the industry and in general and building science and so on and so forth, just super quick. I know I'm going to go into now how to do your self upgrades, but does anybody have any questions on what I just presented before I get into specifics? Yes.
So earlier you showed ROI for certain things.
Mm-hmm.
Did that take into account or ignore the tax rebate or the tax credits?
It's apples to apples. Yeah. So we didn't use tax credits on energy conservation and nothing on solar.
So it might be a little higher.
Well, I mean, there's great tax credits now, assuming they survive. Yeah. So that is an older information and does not reflect the modern IRA tax credits.
Okay.
Does that answer your question? Yeah, good enough. Okay. Anybody else? No? Okay. So let's talk about, we're going to start level to level on how to cut down your air infiltration, maybe add some insulation. So starting in the basement, we already talked about some of these casually. Okay, so I'm assuming, since you guys are know than the average person, which below is best practice, left or right?
Right. Is that styrene on the right?
Yeah, that's
The
extruded.
pink?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. with great stuff foam.
Much
Yeah.
better.
So fiberglass insulation, with the one exception of it being blown in your attic, which we'll get to that best practice in a minute. But fiberglass insulation, unless it's completely air sealed on all 6 sides, is that just that. It's an air filter. It's not an air block. That's why our furnace filters are for the most part made out of fiberglass, because it passes air and filters out the particles. That's all that fiberglass stuck in your rim joist, exposed like that, is doing. You can go down into your basement, if this is the way your basement looks right now on the left, take down a fiberglass bat that's stuck in there and look at it, and you'll see a picture frame with dirt because it's just acting like a filter, most likely, unless you have continuous insulation around the exterior. The right, yeah, foam board, cut to fit, with a little bit of room, maybe 3/8 of an inch cut around, stick it flush up against that rim joist, again, which is the joist that sits on your foundation wall, to be clear, down in your basement or crawl space. And then picture frame it, what we call picture framing, with great stuff or open cell spray foam. It's just a can of great stuff at the hardware store. They sell it all over the place for like $10. And, you know, mask up. We all have lots of leftover masks, I would assume, and put gloves on. And you can do this yourself. Mike has insulation parties where he goes. If you want to host an insulation party, talk to Mike, because he will bring the boards with great stuff, and people go down and learn how to do this themselves. And if somebody's hosting one of these parties in their own home. Okay, so that's the rim joist. This is also cantilever. So you can put some fluffy fiberglass in the cantilever, but you need to make sure the back ambient side is air sealed well, and then the front of it needs to be air sealed well. And cantilevers are just brutal as far as comfort menaces go in your own home.
Excuse me, but what is cantilever?
Oh, I'm sorry, you guys. Please, thank you for stopping me. I use techno-speak all the time. It's like your bay window that juts out over your foundation wall. That's a cantilever. Your garage, if you have a bonus room, conditioned bonus room over garage, that garage floor underneath that bonus room is one big cantilever, technically.
The diving board is a cantilever. Cast at one end, free at the other.
I missed that. The what board?
Oh, diving board.
Oh, yes,
Yeah,
yes,
classic
yes.
cantilever.
Right.
Structural engineering.
Yeah. Yes, so cantilevers that is an area that I used to like ding new contractors on all the time. They did not insulate the cantilevers, and now, you know, then the best practices, they would fill the cantilevers with the same stuff that they were filling their walls with, which was loose blown cellulose or fiberglass, and you would just pack that into the cantilever with the air sealing also done around the joints, and that will completely, if done correctly, clear up any comfort issues that are being caused by that bay window or what have you.
So I'm dealing with that now. Can you close off the cantilever with the structure on the right there?
You can, but you have to make sure that it's completely insulated from top to bottom. Or we can get into some technical other alternatives, but the important thing is that you need insulation up against that floor, that what you consider your conditioned, you know, your bay window or whatever. You need to have, and down in the basement, somebody needs to have installed insulation correctly up against the floor if you don't fill the whole cavity. And you want to make sure that the cavity framing and structure inside there, where it borders outside, is well air sealed. I would, again, stick some great stuff in there and air seal back there. Yeah, great question. Okay, so we talked about that in the basement. Now I'm going to talk about ductwork. Who has exposed ductwork in their basement? Okay, awesome. This is great rainy day project because your ductwork was not sealed correctly. I would guarantee it unless you have a LEED or some kind of Energy Star certified house. Your ductwork hasn't been sealed. And I have general contractors like, well, it's still delivering air where it's leaking out of the ducts. It's still leaking in your house. And I'm like, okay, but the bedroom's the furthest space away from your furnace air conditioner. It's all leaking out by the time any air gets to those corner rooms. And that's why it's uncomfortable, because everything's leaking out on the way to those rooms. And so if you have exposed ductwork in the basement, it's a great opportunity to sort of take care of some comfort issues. You want to use either foil tape, UL 181 is the technical term, or mastic, water-based mastic. And these things there are both bonuses, pluses and minuses. What you don't want is the most inappropriately named material in the hardware store, duct tape. Use it for, fixing your IKEA coffee table. Don't use it on your ducts. So if you're using UL 181 foil tape, pretty straightforward. You need to tape around every joint. You want to make sure that you tape and air seal the air handler plenum too. Don't ignore the actual cabinet. You want to make sure that, where the supply and return is right there. Those all seams need to be sealed as well. Are you out of here? Oh, thank you. See, this guy has everything. Yeah, no, this is great.
Yeah.
And there he goes again. So the thing about the mastic is, first of all, it's cheaper. Your linear foot using a bucket of mastic is going to be less than using UL 181, which is a pretty expensive product, all things considered. This is messy, this here, you just have to add the extra step of a drop cloth, but you also can get in those tight spaces where the ductwork is up against your subfloor with mastic too, and a brush. And so I highly recommend you just going with mastic, putting down a tarp in your basement and just going to town on a day that you have the time, is using mastic to seal every accessible seam on the duct.
The problem with mastic is if you're very much of an anal perfectionist, you'll be there all day. You can't be a real slob, just slop it on.
Yeah, and yeah, I think you can just be a slob unless you're really, I don't know. I'm not anal retentive, so I can't relate, but this is the cheapest and easiest way. This is more expensive, but yeah, it looks nicer, and you don't have need a drop cloth. You don't need to prep the place.
But remember, the problem with foil tape is it's not clean. You come back and later and it's all falling.
That's a good reminder, Mike. Yeah, you have to make sure. In fact, on everything that I'm telling you here, you do want to make sure that you wipe down dust and accumulated spider webs or anything to make sure that it's clean and these products will last in their adherence. So thanks for that reminder, Mike. And then one quick tip, check the dampers. An energy audit, I would find this quite regularly, that somebody was cold in the corner room and it just turned out that a damper was switched. They're usually not this obvious. That might just be a screw stuck in there. And you just want to make sure that the dampers are open too. So, okay. So if you have a basement, let's talk a little bit about water infiltration very briefly, because I'm going to talk about it at the end, because water infiltration is usually about your exterior of the house. And I'm not going to be here to sell you a $20,000 dry basement system when all you need to do is clean your gutters.
And dehumidify.
Well, dehumidification might also be something that you don't need to do anymore if you take care of the watershed around your exterior. but it just depends. We are in a humid place, but I mean, that's a great point. And I think I'd like to maybe address it once I'm through some of these slides that talk about this. I do also want to talk about the basement where most of our equipment is. Does everybody here have their water heater and furnace in the basement? Yeah, okay. So is your water heater next to your furnace? Okay. So what this is a gas burning, just from hot air, flue, open here. Most of us have this type of regular water heater right next to the central systems return that's going into the furnace here. This is awesome, Mike. I need one of these. And then, of course, the furnace flue goes here. And so the water heater is actually probably in the winter doing okay because it's the temperature difference between outside and inside means that hot air releases up really fast. And it also has the draft of the furnace, which is a really powerful fan to also help move that hot air, which is carbon monoxide, to be clear, very unhealthy methane, very unhealthy gases that are in these flues. And I have gone to homes where there would even be like a return grill next to the burner down here. And right? That means that anytime that water heater kicks in, that central cooling and heating season or system might be pulling carbon monoxide and bad gases into the central ductwork system. Best thing to do is just replace that sucker with an electric heat pump water heater. They're the best type of most efficient water heater you can find. And still currently, and maybe for the next 10 years, we'll see, there are really strong tax rebates for heat pump water heaters, $1,200 if memory serves. You have to have a tax liability. Doesn't work if you don't have a tax liability, but yeah, this is not safe, and it's certainly not safe next to your return where it's sucking air.
What are the heat pump hot water tanks? Do you have any idea what they're running? Ballpark, just curious.
Ballpark, $2,500, $3,000. So it'll get you 30 to 50% of the cost. That's a great question.
Is that just in Missouri or Kansas, or is that generic for Kansas and Missouri?
That is federal.
Okay.
Yeah, that is federal. There's a lot of rhetoric around all that stuff right now. So, but right now, it's definitely for, I would say that now that we're into the next year, they're going to have to be viable for all of 2025 too. Yeah.
One of the things I've thought about is that has kept me from doing that is when the power goes out, I can still take a hot shower.
There's something to be said for that. I hear you that, gas is good at that, but you just make sure you've got these safety, that your return is not next to it and that you've got it air sealed well and all those things.
Well, I have a ground source heat pump that supposedly is supplying some hot water in.
Oh yeah.
Into the hot water.
Yeah.
They're somehow connected.
Yes, no, that's true. The superheaters, those are connected with ground source heat pumps and use, the waste heat within that process to dump that hot water into your tank. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Heat pump technology is amazing. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit too, if you guys have questions about heat pump technology, because it's not just for water heaters, it's also for our heating and cooling systems. Okay. But first we're going to talk about DIY stuff in your main living area, interior. Yeah, we're going to talk about windows and doors because everybody wants to know. So a best practice for temporary weatherization is seal and peel. If you have operable windows and know that they're leaky and you want a stopgap measure so you can then use them in the spring, if you like to have your windows open the spring and fall like I do, use a product called Seal and Peel to seal the actual between the glazing, the frame and the windowsill and the rough opening framing. I recommend that you do not use those plastic sheets that people use hair dryers to attach them. Have you seen those? Because the problem is that a lot of times people just leave them up and then you run into big problems in the summer because you have that humid air coming in on the other side of that plastic with your very cold air conditioned house on the other side. And you can get a condensation point trapped in that plastic and it can lead to wood rot. So if somebody likes to use those plastic sheets to sort of cut down the airflow through the window assembly itself, I recommend the Seal and Peel product because then you can just peel off the seal in the spring and start opening your windows again.
Mary, does it come in different colors?
I think it's just clear. Yeah, dries clear. Goes on a little opaque and then dries clear. No colors. At least last I checked. And then rough opening, which I talked about earlier in the presentation. You need to, and I don't have that picture, but I'm sorry. You basically, again, if you live in a very old historical home with very heavy oak wooden finish, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to take off the the trim around your rough opening. But for most of us that live in post-World War II era homes, if you're a do-it-yourselfer, you can gently pry off the rough opening, and then you'll see the gap there around the rough opening, and that's when you use foam or caulk, depending on how narrow or thick that rough opening is. And apologies that I don't have a better picture here. Door best practice is pretty much a no-brainer, assuming everybody already has weather stripping. But the thing about doors is a lot of us neglect the threshold. So a sweep and a threshold, with that rubber gasket below the sweep and a nice, rubber or some sort of composite threshold will seal and keep that air from coming underneath your exterior doors. And then, of course, a good weather strip that the door can close against and seal and keep your door from being leaky. Okay, this is pretty much everybody knows, I think, that LED light bulbs are, modern technology, and they're much more easy on the eyes too. Now you can get different types of colors of LEDs. You can have fun. Choose the color of your mood LED. I have several of those in my house, and sometimes I just put it on a rotating color if I'm in a happy mood. But yeah, incandescent bulbs we know are being phased out and made, kicked to the curb. But for those of us that still have some old incandescent light bulbs, they really are just the worst when it comes to energy efficiency. There's a reason why I was able to bake a cake in my Easy Bake oven as a kid with an incandescent light bulb. They're for raising chickens. They're not for your homes. And incidentally, too, they heat up your house in this summer. So it just makes your air conditioning work harder if you have incandescent light bulbs still in your house. Yes.
I went to CFL lights. I keep wondering if I should replace them with LEDs. What's the comparison?
LEDs, I don't have an exact statistic, but I think CFLs are, maybe 50%-ish. These are 85%, but I don't know. Mike, do you know the answer to that question? I don't know the exact.
No, but I've changed that to LED because those fluorescents that take 30 minutes to turn on, and
yeah, and
the old ones are just
they're terrible. The light is terrible.
Yeah.
The newer ones don't take all the time though, so you don't.
Yeah. But they've gotten better, but the LEDs are still
way more
You don't
efficient.
have to worry about the mercury.
Right. Yeah.
If you got kids.
LEDs are the way to go. Yeah. So many different types now.
I have a vague feeling that the LEDs are roughly half the power of the compact fluorescents. And the compact fluorescents are like a fourth of the power that the
I need to look it up. You know, the irony is that my dad ran a lighting business for 20 years. And this was way back when, you know, it was pinned fluorescence with ballast. There wasn't anything. LEDs weren't around except for maybe floor lights. I don't know. But I am not an expert in lighting retrofits. And that's a kind of a big gap on my resume. So bath fans, this is where we're going to start talking about, you know, I have some health issues in here, and this is your moisture issue. This is where, you know, mold problems. And what I'm talking about here is you might have a fan. Do you know if it works? You have the tools right in your bathroom. All you need is a step stool. Take a sheet of toilet paper and hold it as close as you can without putting it up against the fan, and see if the fan pulls the toilet paper sheet and has it. You can just stick it there. And that means it's drawing enough air to take the moisture, humidity out of your bathroom while you're in there showering. And you want to keep that fan on for a good 15 minutes until your bathroom mirror is clear again. Then you can shut off the fan. And
I think most builders' exhaust fans should be labeled noisemakers.
well,
They're very good at making noise. They don't move much air.
they don't move much air. And the reason why is that somebody goes up there and takes a 20-foot long exhaust tube and twirls it around several different rafters, and then sticks it out, and it's kinked in 3 places. And how well do you think your garden hose works when you have it kinked in 3 places? It's the same with an exhaust fan. So yeah, and when I had my business, I was doing LEED certifications.
Mhm.
And I mean, you had to check that. You had to check the how much it drew, make sure it was working properly. And then there were extra points if it was a quiet fan too, because that was considered a behavioral mitigation, that if it was too noisy, people people would turn off or not turn it on at all. Yes.
What is the concern if you're sucking out heat that you want to keep?
You don't want humid heat, because then in our neck of the woods, in our part of the country, you get black mold. Like this time of year. So my bathroom fan, it's a Champ, ran for 20 years, just conked out a couple of weeks ago. And my husband and I haven't gotten around to replacing it. And I already am seeing specks of black mold, and I'm sacrificing my comfort, and I leave the door wide open when I shower. That's the only way to try to mitigate that mold growth when you don't have an operable exhaust fan in your bathroom. Yes.
Years ago, we had a situation like that. We put something in the paint. We painted it with something that had an little additive to it.
I've never heard of that.
And it got rid of it until we did everything.
Okay, well, that's interesting. I've not heard of that. I'll have to look that up. But if you still have the conditions to grow mold, eventually it's going to catch up to you.
Yeah. And it peels the paint off too.
Yeah.
Because the moisture gets into the drywall.
Yeah, and then this here, this here, the joke is like, here's a fan, but here's the mold. So you have to use it. And if they are using it and there's still mold, it means that it's disconnected or not drawing enough humidity out of the bathroom. Yes, Mike.
In a brand new home, looking up in the attic, and I was looking at the bathroom fan hose, and man, it looks funny. It was going all the way across the house. I lifted up full of water. And it was going so far that the water couldn't get out, the moisture couldn't get out.
It probably wasn't sloped then.
Yeah.
Oh, Chad, you have your phone. Would you mind taking me one picture? My department colleagues are gonna be like, did anybody take a picture of you presenting?
Yeah, I got some.
Oh, okay, perfect.
I'll take one up close too.
Oh, well, okay. It doesn't necessarily have to be that way. They want to see the room with
Anyway,
people. Yeah.
It also makes a difference what the duct is composed of. If it's a spiral wire stuff with plastic, that's not. That has
Yeah,
a lot
the static
of internal
pressure.
turbulence compared to a stiff metal.
Yeah,
duct.
yeah, no, I agree. Unfortunately, it's really hard to retrofit something that's hard ducted. Yeah. But you're absolutely right. So the remedy for that is to make sure it's not bent in any place. It's a short run with as few bends as possible and as taut as possible, because you're right, then the static pressure starts to slow down the flow. Great questions. Okay.
Larry, I had a previous house, I had a basement, the only bathroom that had a shower was in the basement, and there was no exhaust fan when I moved in. And so I installed one, but knew that it needed to run after I was done showering. And so I found one that had an automatic feature, so it would sense humidity. And it
Oh,
would kick
good.
on.
Good.
And so like you could either set it to just run, or you could set it to be on auto. So
Yeah.
we'd run it when we were showering, and when we left, we just flip it on auto, and it would keep running until it sucked all the humidity out. I
Yeah.
don't know if there's still,
Yeah. No, there are lots of products like that. Some of them are more expensive than others.
You could just get a timer switch.
You get a timer switch. Yep.
Turn it on for 15 minutes.
But there are humidistats out there, and there are, sensors that measure relative humidity that are connected now to some more modern technologically built fans. And that, incidentally, is also a strategy for people that have humidity problems inside a crawl space and can't put a supply duct down there. I don't have anything on crawl spaces in here, but if anybody here has a crawl space wants to talk about it, I can blab all day about them. So can Mike. Because they are humid, dank places, or they're cantilevers that are more connected to the outside than they are the inside, and making your house extremely uncomfortable. There's a right way and a wrong way to handle crawl spaces in our region of the world. Another exhaust fan, which is also an immediate health issue, is your where you cook. So first of all, if you have an electric stove top, you're still going to have humidity issues when you're cooking. But the more importantly, if you have gas, this is also a health and safety issue, because those gas stoves and ovens are emitting byproduct like carbon monoxide and methane. There was a study that said that gas stoves are emitting a lot of nasty byproducts when they're not operating. So, there was a group of, some politicians made this another cultural touch point. I don't know why, because gas stoves are not good for you. And if you have an exhaust fan that goes to the outside, even if you just turn on your kettle for tea for 5 minutes, turn on that exhaust fan to make sure you're exhausting out those gases when you're cooking, either stovetop or oven. Yes.
I've seen situations where you have the kitchen exhaust to it. It's great, but it exhausts to the attic.
Well,
So
at least if the attic is ventilated, it's still better.
But your stove will be the most common source of fires in house, and the exhaust fan will take that heat and put it right up in the attic and catch the whole house on fire.
Oh, no, that doesn't sound good, but it still should be used.
somebody online said, I have a crawl space and it's been a nightmare.
Okay, all right. Let's see where I'm going next. Okay, so I am about ready to go into attics, so we can talk about crawl spaces. So person online, crawl spaces can be handled two ways in our area. You can treat it as a cantilever that's ventilated underneath, and the floor between the house and the crawl space is completely treated like an exterior wall, which is very well air sealed and insulated. The whole floor would need to be insulated with a product like loose fill insulation that's packed in with a extruded, like a continuous insulation up against the floor joists to seal in that insulation. Make sure that your rim joist is sealed like we talked about in the start of this presentation. And you can then have it ventilated, and it should be pretty comfortable above the crawl space, and the ventilation will keep mold and stuff like that, should at bay, if you have that connection completely insulated and sealed between the house and the crawl space. Or you can take the entire crawl space in as part of the conditioned envelope of your house. And that means that you insulate the foundation, the small foundation walls that are make up your crawl space. You seal all vents, make sure it's not vented. You make sure that the rim joist also is extremely well insulated, but then you have to put some duct down there, like a supply duct that is going to be putting conditioned air into the crawl space. We talked a little bit about humidistats just a second ago, about exhaust fans. You can also, to make sure that humidity issues are not a problem, if you can't get a supply duct down there to condition it, you can put a exhaust fan with a sensor that's connected to relative humidity, and it'll exhaust out that kick on anytime your relative humidity goes above 55%. You want to stay in that zone in your home. Relative humidity between 45 and 55% relative humidity. Above that, you will start to get mold and other allergens accumulating in your areas of your home if you are consistently above that relative humidity. And you also, of course, I didn't say this, but you want to make sure that if you have your crawl space in as part of the conditioned envelope of the home, you want to have like 6 mil poly sheathing on the ground to make sure that you're sealing any moisture that could be coming up from the ground. It's also radon mitigation too, that poly. And Chad, I don't know if you're going to share my contact information with the folks online. I brought some cards. We're here. MEC is here for you. Feel free to call me Monday through Friday during business hours, and we can talk about that in more detail. And I can send you some actual PDFs online of the best practices when it comes to crawl spaces in our city. Yes.
When you, I guess, insulate the crawl space, is that if you have a concrete foundation, is that include putting some kind of insulation against the foundation?
Mm-hmm. You can put extruded polystyrene. You can spray foam, high density foam product up against it. You do want to make sure that, there's no major water infiltration issues too, just like your basement. So you want to make sure that it's dry. But yes, you would do on the interior, you would do a foam, some type of foam product that's flush with the wall.
We normally use like 6 to 10 mil plastic on the ground.
Oh, yeah, I said 6 mil, but you use 10?
And because if there's rocks down there or anything and
Punctures.
that's
Okay. 6 mil, I say 6 mil because that's what was mandated in the LEED programs that I certified, but yeah, thicker the better. Thank you. Okay, so let's talk about the attic. How am I doing on time? Did you have another agenda item behind me, Chad?
No,
No?
you're,
Okay.
you're it. So
Okay.
we still got some time.
All right, well, great, because I'm a geek and I can talk about this all the time. Okay, so house to attic. Let's talk about that. This is just sort of a fun DIY project that you can do. Now, I'm not saying just do this alone, because if you just handle your attic access and you don't handle all the other problems in your attic, it's kind of like, you just sort of like handled, you taped your thumb when your leg was broken, So, but you have an attic access panel. Those things are huge holes as well and can leak tons of air if they're not insulated. And so we recommend best practice with several thickness layers of extruded polystyrene, or otherwise known as blue board. Seal it together, tape around the seams of the stacked polystyrene. Make sure that the opening where the panel sits down, like you've got your drywall panel, you've got your taped and sealed foam board, and then you have your gasket or weather stripping where all of that assembly sits down on top of the rest of your drywall. And that's a pretty good seal. And you can see too in this illustration, that there's a bank, and then on the other side of that is attic insulation. So you want to make sure too that you have it banked around so insulation doesn't fall on you if you need to go up into the attic. There's also, I saw a lot of pull down stairs in Brookside. Excuse me, and it's a similar way of doing so where you have a cover that then has thick insulation adhered to it on the attic side, and then making sure again that you have weather stripping around in the openings. There's an illustration of a guy weather stripping his attic access with a nice bank of holding the insulation at bay. Oh,
Well,
and then here's my tape
garage-
seams. I'm sorry, what's that?
If your garage is up, my attic entrance is over the garage.
Yeah.
The garage is unheated.
Yeah, you don't worry about it.
Okay.
So I have been using a term called the envelope. So I just want to pause because I have several of these presentations and I forget what's where. I don't have it in here. But the envelope is your conditioned house. It's not all of your house. So if you have an unconditioned attic, your envelope border is at the ceiling, the top floor ceiling border with that unconditioned attic. Your garage should not be considered part of the envelope unless you've converted it completely and put HVAC ducts in there and you've insulated the exterior garage walls to bring it into the envelope space. But you should never like treat a garage where you're parking cars and holding cans of paint and other types of chemical products as part of the conditioned envelope. It's just really unhealthy. So the envelope, what we're talking about here today is making sure that your envelope is well air sealed and well insulated. It's not just comfort, it's durability and occupancy health as well. So yes.
Some people have the area above the garage as part of their envelope.
Yes, the bonus room over the garage.
The bedroom.
That's what we were talking about with the cantilever, that the garage is one big cantilever.
Okay.
And so the garage ceiling or the second floor bedroom usually that's over that garage, extremely unhealthy. People that have their bedrooms over those garages that aren't insulated correctly. Actually, the boss that apprenticed me while I was getting into this business, she said that before she really got into this business, that her daughter's room was over the garage, and she said she was plagued with health problems. And when she got into this, she realized, oh, it's because the garage ceiling or the floor underneath that bedroom wasn't properly insulated and air sealed. Critical. I have done energy audits where returns are also, and that's still allowable in code in vast majority of our suburbs. A return duct that in that wall that's shared between the conditioned house and the garage that's not air sealed well. The powers that be have amended the air sealing requirements in most of our cities. And so you have a return duct that's sucking air into your system after you've pulled your car in, and it's exhausting out that carbon monoxide even after you've turned the engine off for 10, 15 minutes. It's just not healthy. Okay, aren't I just a cheerful person to have around? Okay, so attics. Big area, I talked about it earlier in the presentation, are canned lights. These are just big holes. If you have unsealed canned lighting, they're just like big holes in your ceiling up into the attic, losing hot air in the winter, and maybe pushing hot air in the summer down into your top floor where, so many people have told me that their second floor was just hot and miserable in the summer and cold in the winter. A lot of times it's the can lights, depending on how many you have. And so you can get styrofoam coolers, buckets, different types of materials. Mike can probably give you a lot of details on how to, the best practice on what materials to use. The good thing about this is that for a few years there, before people, well, we still had a lot of incandescent lighting. People didn't know the best practice here. You could start a house fire with insulation up against a hot recessed light fixture. Now we have cool LEDs, and so it's not as big of a hazard. But you still want to make sure really that you've covered but not smothered the can fixture. You want to cover it and seal around it with great stuff. You can see that they've used a temperature, high temperature grade stuff. That pink is high temperature rated great stuff, but you don't necessarily need to use that now that we have cool LEDs usually in the can lighting. Other penetrations, you want to make sure that you get your pipes, any sort of plastic PVC pipes. You can really go crazy and start sealing the seams between the framing and the drywall if you don't have any insulation up there. There are a lot of old homes that have hardly any insulation in their attics. It's not just for a brand new home. Brand new homes, that's your time to do a best practice and air seal all the cracks between the framing and the drywall before insulation is blown over the top of it. Because we're using usually fiberglass up there now, that cellulose product, which was my favorite, is too expensive and not a good product anymore because newspapers are going by the way of the dinosaur. That's what that product is cellulose is recycled newspapers. Now we have mostly fiberglass. You have to make sure that the air sealing is done as good as you possibly can, because again, what I said earlier is that fiberglass works best when it's air sealed around it. And so you want to get that envelope threshold between your top floor and your attic as air sealed as possible. Now, this picture on the right, okay. This picture on the right is the boundary between an attic bonus room. Somebody built see this a lot in older homes where somebody builds an extra room in part of their attic. So you have half of the attic that is unconditioned, looks like an attic, and half the attic, which is a bedroom, maybe. And so they'll build a wall, we'll throw some fiberglass bats up there. And now I need this. First of all, fiberglass in a wall needs it to be enclosed on all 6 sides. So they didn't enclose this fiberglass with, again, foam board is the best practice. You can use other air sealing measures. Don't use plastic. Plastic is a vapor barrier. Plastic bad. Never use plastic. But you can use like Tyvek, will pass vapor but still act as a good air barrier as long as you tape it up. But best practice is foam board. You can see the dirt on this fiberglass. There you see it as a filter because of the air that's going through the wall, through the fiberglass, and leaving the
plywood.
Sure, yeah. Again, tape seams. You want to make sure that everything all the seams are caulked, taped. Make it as tight as you possibly can. Don't think, oh, that's a tiny little crack. Nothing's going to get through there. You'd be surprised.
But foam board would be easier instead of plywood because you got it with bread and butter on it,
Yeah.
so to speak.
It's true.
Plywood would, oh.
Yeah, well, plywood's expensive. Yeah. I think plywood, you're not saving anything by going with plywood over a foam board anyway. Plywood's gone up there now that we're all using particle board. So what I wanted, though, the tip that I wanted to make sure that I pressed upon everybody here is this is the band joist. We talked about the rim joist, which is the joist that sits on your foundation wall. Any other spaces in between your floors, your first floor and your second floor, is also called a joist, but it's band joist. So this is a band joist. And I can't tell you how many bonus rooms I have seen where they have, and they might even have insulated this wall correctly. Maybe they do have an air barrier here and it's not this horrible, dirty fiberglass that's left exposed, but then they'll still have the band joist completely open. And so the path of least resistance, the one thing I didn't say about air infiltration and exfiltration is it goes out in the path of least resistance. And if this is completely open, all your hot air is going to go up through that space in between the floor below and this bonus room and go out, whether there's fiberglass insulation here or not. That is a huge problem of air leaks. If this is not, again, foam boarded and spray foamed as an air seal first. And then these walls should have an air barrier on the other side of them, and they should take out that dirty fiberglass and replace it as well with something fresher. But that's really important. If, you know, I know Prairie Village has a lot of this stuff too. This is just letting you know that if you still have a traditional furnace flue, you want to put a metal collar to hold insulation away from that hot metal flue, or it will be a fire hazard. Probably do that with a kitchen fan too, if it's metal, like we were talking about earlier. And then it's showing fire caulk. Fire caulk is the only thing that's rated to air seal around a
The
furnace
exhaust
flue.
fan wouldn't be a fire hazard though.
Well, you were
Or
saying that the
the
air
flue.
goes up through. Oh, yeah. I gotcha. Agreed. Okay, so I want to talk briefly about, now we've air sealed, we've added our covers over our light fixtures, we've done the attic access and so on and so forth, and now we have knee walls, which are the walls separating the conditioned and unconditioned attic, and a flat ceiling that needs insulation added. You can see that here, I put this illustration to show another view of this is here. So this is like from an aerial view, the bonus room. And then if you don't block the band joist, the hot air will just go whoop. Okay, so knee walls again, same picture. Dirt on the unsealed fiberglass bat. Notice the correct way. Also, you don't want to leave your trash down here. It's terrible. Okay, and then here's another illustration. So here is fiberglass with foam board on the, again, the attic side. So, you know, I'm expecting the house side, the conditioned side will have drywall. That's your air barrier on the conditioned side. And then on the knee wall on the attic side, you want to have a tape sealed foam board assembly going across all the studs. If it looks like this, there's a project for you. That's terrible. You might want to have a professional, because unless you have some kind of assembly up there or you're a really great joist balancer, it's not very safe to do this stuff yourself, but a lot of people do. So I keep it in here. DIY adding attic insulation. If you don't hire Mike, you can rent the equipment and the product at your big box stores to haul up there and blow your own loose blown insulation. Don't roll bats up there. It's not a best practice. It's terrible. You want to air seal everything and then blow a loose blown product so it settles down in all the cracks. And best practice for our is 16 inches of settled loose blown product up there. Any questions? And then also use a mask and gloves. Yes.
I have the blown in insulation, and can I get up there and walk around on it? Will it regain its composure? I kind of want to look. I'm unhappy with the bathroom duct. So,
well, you know, just keep it at a bare minimum, you know, and know where your joists are. I mean, you can fall through the ceiling and really hurt yourself.
I'll put some boards on the joists.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you wanted to get out on it, take some temporary plywood planks and use that to walk.
Agreed. Yeah. It'll, you know, you just, again, keep the smashing down at a bare minimum, though, because
It'll keep you up in the attic.
yeah, exactly.
well, I wondered if it would regain its loft after I got off.
No, and it will not, it'll lose its insulative value too if you've smashed it down.
The air.
Yeah.
Part of the insulation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's got to be the right density. Yes,
One of the problems today is I love cellulose.
I
The
know.
problem is the quality is deteriorating.
I know.
See,
You've
if
told
it
me
was-
that, and that's why I tell people don't buy cellulose anymore because of you.
Yeah. I still love it, but it doesn't.
I heard that there's a test product of using recycled wood.
Yeah.
Where's
that's
that
pretty
in the
much,
marketplace now?
it's coming, it's not here yet.
Okay.
It's here, but it's not, it's more on the East Coast.
And it's probably, until we get more people using it, it's probably pretty expensive, I would assume.
It'd be tricky to have the dead air, and if the dead air is what you really want.
Yeah.
No, cellulose is fantastic. The cellulose of our historic work, the recycled newspapers, the good product that was done correctly, hands down, my favorite insulation of all time was that cellulose.
It's a boron white powder. Bugs don't like it.
Bugs don't like it. It's just a better, well, you have your display that you take around that shows how quiet cellulose is compared to fiberglass. Just a superior product until newspapers tanked. And now there's not enough newspaper to recycle it. And Mike, you told me that there's like plastic pieces and stuff in there now. And I'm just not I'm not praising cellulose anymore. Yeah, you don't want to be breathing in fiberglass. Okay, here's the part that I told you to wait for about
Very well.
wet basements. But does anybody have any questions on attics? We talked. No, okay. All right, so your exterior in a lot of ways controls your relative humidity in your house. Because if you have water shed into the basement, that's going to raise your relative humidity in the house and cause mold growth and problems. So, do an exterior inspection, walk around, see if you have any gutters that are disconnected from your spouts and make sure that your drainage system drains at least 6 feet away from your property. There's another example of just a gutter that's dumping down next to the foundation. Keep your gutters clean, which I understand is a complete pain because I live just a few blocks down here, Prairie Village resident, and we have big pin oaks and a linden and several red buds, and it's a mess in the fall. But if just watch on a heavy rain event if we haven't cleaned the gutters and it's just draining right there next to my foundation wall. If you have the gutters cleaned, or if you do fancy gutter covers, that will go a very long way towards keeping wet out of your basement. This is an extreme example, but make sure that your gutters are all connected and draining. Make sure that your grade next to your wall doesn't slope in. Make sure it slopes away. Again, keep watershed at least 6 feet away from your foundation. Yes.
Do the gutter guards you see advertised all the time really work? Or do they also clog up?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. I would assume that
They
if
do
they're,
work. And then they also, you gotta pay an arm and a leg and they'll charge you, but they'll come back supposedly.
if they're still in business, yeah,
Yeah.
right. I've heard good things about them, but I don't have any direct experience.
I've
So I
installed
can't
the-
answer that question.
The
I'm sorry.
vinyl, like you go to the Lowe's or Home Depot, and they are sold in like little 3-foot.
Yeah.
And that works pretty good. I mean, like if you have an asphalt shingle, some of the shingle, you have to clean them out once in a while, but
Mhm.
for leaves and big stuff, it does keep them out.
Thank you, Chad. Appreciate that. Okay, and then one last bonus tip, I'm almost done. And I also want to talk about this study. I apparently didn't have a slide on the study in here. Before I do though, this is fun. So we talked about air infiltration and exfiltration. We have an appliance in our house that exfiltrates a ton of air. It's our clothes dryers. In the winter, if you are running your dryer in the coldest time of day, you are exhausting out 200 cubic feet of air a minute. And your house now is in negative pressure and it needs to take, it's one out, one in. There's nothing, that equation is absolute, that's physics. And so 200 cubic feet of air is going out. Now your house is bringing in 200 cubic feet of air through all your cracks, and your furnace has to work that much harder to keep your house warm because you're just exhausting air for hours at a time, however long you're taking to do laundry and dry your clothes. So, and this is something that I had to like nag my spouse about quite often. And like, don't run the dryer when it's 0 degrees out. Wait until it's at least 20 degrees. It's like, so, plan around it is all I'm suggesting when you dry your clothes in the dryer. And in the summer, use your line. It's an extremely good energy savings if you have the time to hang your clothes out to dry, because these are huge energy suckers. Okay, so we have a study. I want to talk about this real quick. We actually have a study that correlates. Again, we had statisticians from UMKC that did use the data. Metropolitan Energy Center oversaw over 6,000 weatherized renovations during the Obama era, put out a lot of money to do weatherization. If you recall, it was ERA, ARRA, like I'm drawing a blank on what that stood for, but at the time was unprecedented amount of money to weatherize buildings. MEC was the one that controlled all the weatherizing that was happening during that era. And so we had a lot of addresses of houses that were improved, mostly air sealing, insulation, and duct sealing, just like all the stuff that we went over here. And we took Children's Mercy Hospital data of pediatric asthma patients that were in those same addresses. And then UMKC took pediatric asthma patients that were in the same time period, but didn't have their homes weatherized during that same time period. And so they had the control group of asthma patients that were in homes that didn't get weatherized, and then the data of the asthma patients that were in homes that got weatherized, insulation, air sealing, duct sealing. 34% drop with the kids, these were pediatric asthma patients, in asthma intensity and number of visits to the hospital, both of those things. 34% is a huge statistic. It's a correlation. It's not a causation. We need more money. Any of you connected with grants? We need more money to see if we can pin down that causation. Is it, because we have mold problems. Is it mold growth in walls or the attic? What is it? Or is it ozone that's being pulled in through a leaky house? I am more inclined to think that it's the first, that it's poorly insulated and air sealed houses. No matter the era, we had modern homes that also had improvement in asthma patients after their homes were weatherized and improved. So 34% difference. And that study can be found on our website if you want to read the whole white paper that was written by the UMKC doctoral professors. They're the ones that analyzed the data, and they're the ones that wrote the paper. And it's analyzed by age of home, region. It's all in the Kansas City, Missouri proper area.